Great. Then let's go ahead and call the Port Orchard Finance Committee of August 17, 2021 to order. And we have an agenda. The first item on the agenda is the sales tax revenue report. Noah?
Great. So we sent out the sales tax revenue report last week. I'm happy to report another phenomenal month. For July, you can see that we received 600, and I'm going to zoom in here. Hope I don't make anybody sick. We received $605,000 in sales tax revenue, which is roughly about 80,000 higher than our prior year's July collection, or 15% for that period. Year over year collections were about 25% higher collections than we were for 2020. And when reviewing that in the context of our budget, we're about 33% higher than our budgeted amount of sales tax revenue for the period through July. So sales tax continues to be strong for our city.
Great. Real estate excise tax.
Moving down the REIT, REIT had a really big month. We collected $505,000. Again, this is roughly $400,000 more than our July of 2020. And again, the percentages are now out of kind of this planet, so they don't really mean a whole lot. But what we can tell you about is that there were some significant real estate deals that closed in July. There was an apartment building complex for about $75 million, which closed. And again, we get a big chunk of the revenue from that. So the good news is we have already met our biennial goal. So we are 100% achieved our biennial target as we sit here in July of 2021.
No, I might have forgotten when the transaction occurred, but there was a development that changed hands recently. Would that be in this somewhere?
The other big month for us was in February, and I think that's when that occurred.
That may have been when that occurred. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we thought that was a big number then. So to see the 500,000, truly big number.
One piece of this was the sale of an apartment complex, the overlook there above the movie theater. A developer built it and then sold it off, and then sold off the future development rights for the next phase, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Nick.
Yeah, and I remember also seeing a transaction, the apartment complex on Sydney Avenue, just south of Vanderbilt Park, I think also closed in July, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But the Atlas?
I think I remember seeing that one had sold, yes.
Okay, that would be the second time that apartment complex has sold.
Yeah, I think it sold in 2017, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I'm trying to remember what it was when it originally was developed, but then it was something else and it became the Atlas, and now you're saying it sold again. That's, people are willing to invest in our community. I think that's a good thing.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah, fantastic.
it's primarily a couple of large apartment complex sales is what drove that.
Okay.
So moving on, I sent out the monthly budget report on Tuesday, I believe is the last night I got it out. So hopefully you've had a chance to review that. A couple of things I wanted to point out here in this report. Again, according to our financial data, we have received 85% of our budgeted revenues from our current expense fund. And when I first looked at that, I was kind of a bit shocked. I know we have really good sales tax numbers and permitting numbers, so all that's really healthy and strong. But the big driver here for this big bump at 85% is the $1.4 million of the ARPA funding that was receipted in this month. So that really bumped us up. So that skews the numbers a little bit, and you can see that right here in intergovernmental revenue, where we've collected nearly $2 million again in that category. But that category is a restricted revenue source, so it cannot be used for anything and all things. It's going to be related specifically to the ARPA legislation.
It's not restricted to anything. There are certain things that it can be used for.
Yes. The other table I want to zoom in on here real quick is our impact fees Again, they're coming in strong. We are getting close on transportation. We're only $102,000 short of our kind of biennial budget and obligations. So I expect that we'll hit that this year with all the development activity. And to the column to the right here, if you look at the REIT, we have met our 21-22 budgeted expenses as well as our obligated expenses that are unbudgeted yet. So that's really good news on the REIT front. Again, strong revenues. We're accomplishing a lot there.
Well, I think that's allowed us to accomplish a lot as well. So, yeah.
So I'm gonna scroll all the way back down here to the back page so we can look at quick look at fund balances here. Again, all healthy balances, no concerns in the general fund. We have $10.2 million. Again, a significant, well, not a significant portion, but about 1.5 to $2 million of that is restricted for the ARPA funds, as well as there is some money in there from our affordable housing sales tax that's restricted. And then we have some money that we'll talk about here in a second that will be restricted as well. So there are some restricted dollars in there, but overall, very, very healthy in the general fund, as well as all of our funds.
Good news. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no questions on the monthly budget report or fund balances, the next item is our law enforcement legislative funds. And so originally, I had invited the chief to talk about this a little bit. You will see that this is on the agenda for tonight. And so I can start because I don't see the chief here any longer. He keeps popping in and out. But in July 2021, the city of Port Orchard was notified and had received $60,000 from the Washington State Legislature to pay for one-time costs generated by the law enforcement criminal justice legislation enacted between January 1st, 2020 and June 30th of 2021. So we did receive this appropriation. We do have the funds, and the chief is working through the legislation to identify the different opportunities that you can use those funds for. At this point, tonight's action is simply to acknowledge the legislature's intent with the funds and accept that in. There's no expenditure action tonight. It's just accepting the funds.
No, my only question, and I guess it would be to the chief, in the first proposed expenditure to come up with a less lethal armament that is, the 40 millimeter beanbag kind of a thing. I had just heard recently, and I don't know if we've got any kind of an update, that the Attorney General has issued an opinion that the new legislation does not affect the beanbag guns that have been used in the past. I don't know if you got any update on that. I appreciate that this expenditure is to buy somewhat the same thing, just propelled with air instead of gunpowder, but
I think the chief left us, so
yeah,
he was here earlier, but that's something
when we get to those expenditures at some point. Anyway, I just asked the chief and you guys to take a look to make sure that we're replacing something that we really don't need to replace.
Yeah, I know one of the things on the agenda tonight was the case cracker software.
Yeah.
And we're going to pull that item. I'm going to ask one of you guys to pull that. That's how we thought some of these funds were going to be spent. And here's the chief back to be able to answer your question. But we've learned since that we went out on the agenda that if we go to body cameras, what the case cracker software will do for us is incorporated in body cameras. So we're not going to, it doesn't make sense to buy that right now. If we don't go to body cameras, then we may revisit that. But yeah. Chief John had some comments about whether or not we need these less than lethal alternatives or not. And whether you can
specifically the one that refers to the replacement of the beanbag with the air propelled one. And Chief, I might have dreamt this, but I had heard somewhere that the State Attorney General offered an opinion that indicated that the beanbag guns that we have are acceptable under the new legislation. I don't know if you've heard anything to the contrary.
Chief's having problems with his audio. It's flickering now.
Well, I don't need a response tonight. It just,
Yeah,
some-
okay, we'll look into that, John.
yeah,
We've captured that, so.
thank you. Other than that, everything that was proposed in this document, I certainly don't have an issue with and understand, so.
I think some of these funds are going to do some pre-work potentially on the body camera side of it, but we'll be back before the council as we go to spend these funds to get approval.
That's fine. And as Noah indicated, tonight's action at council is just to accept the funds, not to spend them yet.
Correct.
So, okay. Anything more on law enforcement, or should we move on to water?
That is all I had, and the chief keeps popping on and off, so I think we can move on to water.
Okay.
So this is also another item on tonight's council meeting for discussion and action. First thing is the exception cleanup. I'm gonna pull this up real quick here. So again, last month we just adopted some language in the exceptions provisions in the chapter. And what we noticed, sorry, let me get in here. What we noticed is that when we got our first application, we started going through the process of evaluating where this application qualified. One of our items under D in both the water and the sewer, actually they would fail the test. And so after rereading it carefully, we realized that while we fixed the language up here at the top as far as what our intent was to allow for partial and or a full exception from paying the CFC, the way this was worded required that all four of these provisions, A through D, be met in order to qualify for a partial or full exception. And in order for D to work, we had to make some adjustments to meet the intent, I think, of what we talked about with the council and what we've presented on it over the last month or so. So I just want to review D real quick. So for the big changes that for a full exception, after the building improvements are completed or no use implemented, the total calculate ERUs for the count will be equal to or less than the ERUs numbers calculated by the city under the prior structure. So that would give an applicant an opportunity for a full exception from the CFCs. And you see here, we actually add in whole language here on a partial exception. And under the partial exception, the new ERU value is going to be calculated larger than the existing value, which would then again create that delta for which they would receive a credit against the portion that's historically been there, and they would pay their portion of the higher ERUs. So I hope that makes sense, because that's really what we've been talking about the last month. That's what we intended. And we just happened to run into it at the first application. We saw it and said, hey, the way this is worded actually does not allow them to receive a partial exception in the code like we had envisioned and talked about. So we have made the modifications here under the water provisions. And then we made the similar provisions in the sewer side. However, again, today, Public Works pointed out to me that we left one word in right here. This word has now been changed to sewer. So the credit will be towards the sewer capital facilities charge, and there will be a credit and exception towards the water capital facilities charge. So thank you for Public Works for catching that today. And we've made that change to the clean ordinance, which will be adopted. But I wanted to point that out, that there is a small minor correction within the correction.
Makes sense to me.
Any questions on that before we move on?
Well, you said that you received an application in that brought this to your attention or to everyone's attention. Did we put a pause on that application until we made these corrections?
You just haven't issued the permits.
Okay,
Yes, yeah, the application is still going through the process. So we would consider it still in process at this point. We did not deny them based on the current code.
okay. Okay,
Okay. So Nick has agreed to talk about the credit discussion for tonight.
Yeah, so this is item 8B on tonight's city council agenda, and I will let you know that this has already been through the utility committee, who recommended that this be advanced to tonight's city council meeting for full discussion, but we wanted to vet this with finance as well. If you will remember, probably 6 or 8 months ago, we adopted changes concerning sewer CFC credits to incentivize private developers to build facilities that are part of our CFC calculation. And in that case, we already have one developer building a sewer lift station in the Ruby Creek Basin, and they're receiving a credit on their CFCs towards the some of the value of what they are creating for the city. We have proceeded with almost an identical framework for water with a few key differences. And so those differences are, number one, that we already have one water credit agreement in place with McCormick Woods, where we give a $1,000 credit for every connection in that area that is related to the construction of the new 580 reservoir that is just about online for the city. So the code actually recognizes that this chapter is not going to preclude the enforcement of existing agreements. The other big distinction for water is that we have the 1998 purchase and sale agreement where the city bought the McCormick water system. So if you'll remember, the sewer agreement said that you can get a credit that is proportionate to the excess capacity that you create for a facility. So if you build a sewer lift station that has 1,000 ERUs and you're going to use 30% of those ERUs, you would get a 70% credit towards the value of that facility, which is the basis of our capital facility charge. We're doing the same methodology for water, except that areas covered by the 1998 agreement are exempt from that proportionate share agreement. And that is because that agreement included certain promises by the city to do certain things, and we needed to retain the flexibility to negotiate agreements for the construction of infrastructure that provides water service in that area covered by the 98 agreement. I think that is the extent of really the differences between the two chapters. But we wanted to make sure that there weren't any questions of the finance committee, and also to make sure that you were comfortable with this advancing as proposed. And Noah, if I missed anything, feel free to chime in.
No, I thought you did a really good job, Nick. So we're again just mirroring what we've already accomplished with the sewer credit language, except for the two provisions that Nick highlighted.
For existing agreements, makes sense.
yep.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. I
Okay.
guess we're at the American Rescue Plan funding, which is on the agenda tonight.
So very similarly, to the money we have received from the state legislature, this is the American Rescue Plan Act, which we have received $1.4 million of half of our total allocation, and we received this money back in June. So the action coming to the council tonight is again merely accepting the funds and acknowledging that we will follow the Treasury's interim rule and only use the funds for those eligible expenses as they've identified. And importance is we have talked about this over the last several months, and in particular, council has given us direction to focus on our infrastructure projects for using the funds. And so we've kind of laid that out here as far as those projects that we're currently targeting to use those funds for, starting with well 11, which represents this number 7, number 8 here. We are looking to procure a design firm to design those booster and transmission mains. So that is the first step of kind of direction, is to accept the ARPA money, acknowledge and accept it. And meanwhile, the Public Works Department is working to develop the RFP to advertise for design work. Once those RFPs come back and we have final numbers, we'll bring back the expenses for approval and the contracts for approval to council.
Now, once that is completed, construction of that project, then we'll have the two systems tied together, correct?
Actually, the plan is to get the design done first.
I appreciate that. That's why I say when the project is constructed,
Yeah,
when it's completed, we'll have the two systems tied together.
if that's the project we end up moving forward with. And we got to caveat that with, we have well 13 and the marina, well 11 and marina pump station. We will do the design, and it'll, if nothing else, allow us to compete for grants. We may make a recommendation a year from now after we know more about the construction of these other two projects. If we fall short, we may be asking you guys to put those money into the any cost overruns we have on those projects that we know we're going to construction on next year. And then if we don't have any cost overruns, then we can consider other projects, which could be this intertie.
Appreciate that, Rob. I just mainly, we're designing a project
Yes,
that we're able to fund. And when we're able to complete the construction on that project, we will have the systems tied together.
correct. And there's a second intertie planned on the other side of McCormick.
Right, the other side of McCormick. But I just want to make sure what we're designing.
Yep, that is what we're designing, is an intertie.
Thank you. Okay. Anything more on the rescue plan? If not, Mayor, I guess it's up to you on the health district request.
Yeah, this one gave me pause. When we did the budget, you know, the city of Bremerton and the other cities in the county, the county funds the health district at $7 per 100 citizens, I think it is. Anyway, and the cities fund at $3. And we were funding at $1. And so we, as part of our last budget process, we tripled our funding of the health district, and I felt it was appropriate. All the cities were, some of the cities had already gone to that level, and Bremerton and Port Orchard's the only ones that hadn't, and we did too. And really, in particular, it was appropriate due to the COVID activity that everybody was doing. The public health needed more funding. Now public health has come back with another request that the board's approved, but it needs to come back to the individual jurisdictions. And this one causes me to pause. It's about $12,000 to fund their diversity, equity, and inclusion employee. And I believe that that should be funded within the current resources, if we feel that we need that, not a special assessment back out. It would cause us to increase our funding 4 times of what it was 2 years ago. And you know, but I just want to bounce this off you guys. Maybe we need to discuss it as the full council, but it just makes me pause to increase our funding again when we've just tripled it here.
Can I just rephrase what you said so to make sure I understand it? We had been paying like $1 per 100 people. And then we raised that to $3?
Yes.
Okay, and the county is still paying $7 per 100. So we're still at a lower level than them, than the county.
But all of the cities are.
Yeah, right, no, I just want to make sure I understand. Yeah. And then the health district, this $12,000 ask, is that per jurisdiction or is that total for everyone?
No, it is more than $200,000, and
Oh,
it's our proportional share of this person and their assistant. So no, it's our proportional share of a $200,000 salary, benefits, the cost.
okay, my knee-jerk reaction to this, without giving it a lot of thought, just my knee-jerk reaction, is this particular employee, there is no reason to treat this employee and the expenses of that employee different than any other employee the public health district has. So they need to include that however they do in their budget. And I don't see us paying an additional $12,000 just for the one employee.
It's kind of what I indicated to Keith Grellner. But I told him I would run it up the flagpole.
Right. And again, like I said, that's my knee-jerk reaction. I haven't had the time to really think about it or work on it. John, how do you feel? I mean, what's your?
Well, my question was going to be more on timing. Is this something that they're proposing to do like right away, or can it be?
It is, we're being asked to, so here's what we paid in 2019. Then we basically tripled our more than tripled. And now because of population growth and because of primarily property, that's what we're going to pay in 2021 based on the $3. And then there's also there's an assessment too for their office space, paying their mortgage. We pay that. That's part of this 43 and growing to 47. And then we're projecting it to the 20, it'd be 48. And if we did, with the ask is for an additional 12 on top of the 48. So next year we'll be paying 48,000 when we were paying 13,000. And I think that's appropriate because they're doing a
Really
lot.
good work.
Their role has greatly been expanded in our community because of COVID and the COVID activities. But it just gives me pause to add another function. And I can appreciate that we all, we need to have diversity, equity, inclusion, but I just think it needs to be built into their existing operations and not a special assessment.
Another question that comes to mind is just, okay, we have this special assessment. Is that a one-year assessment or is that an ongoing assessment?
That was my question as well. It sounds like it's an ongoing assessment of extra 12 over and above.
Right, that needs to be just figured into the regular budget and not a special item. Again, that's my knee jerk on it. Yeah.
That was my reaction, and that's what I communicated to Keith. But I'm just sharing it with others to make sure that my position wasn't wrong.
The reason that I asked for timing, I appreciate what they're trying to accomplish, but they're trying to accomplish it on top of dealing with COVID, which we're all stressed out, both financially as well as staff. And I don't know, that's why I was asking timing. If I agree with what you're saying, Beck, about being included in their regular budget process and not doing this additional assessment.
Yeah, we all have to live within our means.
Well, and your means change, but is now the right time? And I don't know if there ever is a right time, but that's kind of my reaction as well.
Okay, I will communicate that to Keith, that we're happy to pay the 42, whatever it was, but we're not interested in the additional assessment.
Derelict boats, speaking of money.
Yeah, so the chief, I don't know if he's still having his microphone problems. So, we're seeing a growing problem out there in the bay, if you haven't noticed it. Last count, there was about 14 of those boats out there. We have one that's on the bottom, and you guys graciously put about $25,000 into the budget to deal with these boats. That one boat that's on the bottom is going to cost us almost $35,000. to raise and to destroy. This should be the state's responsibility. We're not getting any traction there. They underfund I think it's DNR grossly every biennium, and there's never enough money. And so things, if we don't deal with it, nobody will. So what the chief is concerned is he has staffing limitations and challenges due to open positions, and we're working towards getting jobs filled. And we just learned about retirement, matter of fact, today. So the hole got a little deeper. To deal with these boats, we want to deal with them before they sink, ideally, because they're $3,000 to $5,000 a piece to seize and destroy. But the process to do that is them going out and tagging each one of these boats with, and writing all the VIN numbers and everything. And then we need to document, is it every 30 days or every 45 days, Chief?
30 days.
Every 30 days, for every day for 30 days, we have to confirm that this boat hasn't moved before we could seize it. And there's a piece of software and a piece of hardware we could get for our drone to do that much more efficiently than putting 2 officers on our marine vessel and patrolling that inlet every day. So, and we're willing to do that. The next step after that, though, is then seizing the boat and then destroying the boat. But that's going to take additional resources being put back into the budget. And we're willing to do that. But what we don't want to do is spend all those man hours on this process and not get an indication that we're going to be able to put more dollars into that bucket to be able to destroy these vessels. And probably it's another $50,000 I'll get for the remainder of the biennium. And I would hope that if we seize a few of these boats and destroy a few of them, that the others will move along somewhere else. But there's no guarantee.
Do we have liveaboards on any of them?
I think they're all living on them, and it's
You think
kind of
they're
our
all
whole
liveaboards?
camp out there.
It's a little bit of a mix. There are some people that are living out there so they don't have to pay marina fees.
Right.
I think that's certainly that's a separate issue than the derelict boats.
Right.
I think we can work on the derelicts first.
Yeah.
I sure hope they're not living on the one that's on the bottom, but Rob,
Very good, Scuba.
It's partly out of the water though, half the day.
well, that's true. They sit up.
Lower the tide, yeah.
I know we took an attempt at the legislature this last time and asked them to put more funds for DNR. I'm wondering if we shouldn't kind of rethink our approach and suggest that DNR add whatever, $10 to the boat registration fee, annual registration fee, and dedicate that funding to derelict boats, because I appreciate we need to clean up our waterfront, but as you indicated, it's the state's responsibility. Why are we taking over for what the state should be doing?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and we can add it to our legislative agenda for this next session to, maybe consider a different approach, but it's got to be passed into law. It's not.
I know. That's what I'm thinking, and if they were to do something like a fee on the vessel registration that is dedicated to derelict boats, hopefully it won't get diverted 4 years down the road to fund some other issue. But I'm supportive of doing it. I think we're going to have to do something on waterfront, and I think the additional equipment for our drone makes perfect sense versus putting a couple officers in our boat and driving out there once a day.
And then ultimately, when we seize them, we've got to put some resources into destroying these vessels, because we're going to deplete more than what we have allocated already on one boat, because it ended up on the bottom. We got to get these things out of the water before we have more of those situations.
Maybe need anything for target practice? Being facetious.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, just communicating and making sure that we're on the right path.
I'm supportive of it. Beck, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I can support, particularly starting with the derelict boats and not the ones that are being used for liveaboards, because I would hate to contribute to our homeless population moving off the water and moving into a, park somewhere. So,
There's just a
The
process.
thought would be to ask the state for approval for the city to be able to charge a monthly, weekly, daily lease rate for boats tied up in their water.
correct.
And as the chief indicated, there's a separate process for those liveaboards, and they're allowed to be there for so many days. And we just, once again, part of this process, we got to document that they haven't moved, and then we can
Right.
encourage them to move along.
Well, they
What's
should move, 'cause they have to empty their holding tanks unless they're just,
I'm certain that they do.
correctly?
yeah, I mean,
I doubt that, I
yeah,
don't
they're
know.
probably not using holding tanks.
Yeah,
And yeah,
that's another problem.
Yeah.
To move, to satisfy the requirement to move, is it just pick up your anchor and paddle down
Yes.
50
How many
feet?
miles
drop
is it, chief?
in?
I think it's 5 miles radius. So I
Oh,
think it's 5 days and then 5 miles. And then there's a limited number of days that you can actually be in the sound without being on a marina. But I'm not the marine guy. I'd have to get that
Yeah.
information from him.
yeah. Well, that's,
Once they leave here, we're not tracking them.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure they leave here.
Yeah, I do know that in the conversations and meetings we've been having with the port and some others, I mean, we're certainly not alone with this problem right now. So, all of the inlets and the bays are kind of filling up with garbage.
All right,
Neighbor Jalen dealt with this a long, years ago in that Eagle Harbor
Right.
situation. So, yeah, it's just become more our problem. So we just need to address it.
okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
Hey, Nick, do you want to talk about the
Yeah. I was
census?
just about to do that. So we did, the mayor actually got a call today from a reporter asking about the 2020 census numbers. And I dug into it a little bit this afternoon. I had been looking at the US Census website, but actually OFM has the raw data and has been breaking it down. And I have an Excel spreadsheet that tells us, gives us a lot of this data in just a spreadsheet format. It appears that our OFM population was quite a bit higher than our OFM number. So the census has us at 15,587 in population for 2020, which is more than we are currently for 2021. And so the good news is that all the growth that we've been seeing is actually more than what we indicated. I think we have been probably missing out on our share of the state revenue a little bit because they have undercounted us. If you remember, we actually appealed the OFM numbers back in 2019 because they had vacancy rates that just seemed totally out of whack with what the real estate market was showing. And while they didn't give us everything we asked for, they did adjust us by about 100 people. But it seems now that they were off by almost 800 people in 2020. So we'll have to change the signs at the city limit of Port Orchard signs. And it looks like we were the fastest growing city in the county, although that's probably skewed just a little bit by the annexations early in the from 2010 to 2013, we annexed some areas. And so I think that puts us right around 27 to 32% growth over 10 years.
Wow.
But a big piece of that was the McCormick annexation.
Right,
We
right.
have to
I think
recognize-
McCormick was 09, wasn't it? This was there was a Retzel annexation, and then there was the Bethel annexation.
order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the good news for the finance committee is that when we see our next OFM number come out, it's going to change our share of the distribution of state funds. And so we should get a little bit of a bump in those state revenues.
so how did you analyze any of the other cities in the county?
I did, and I've highlighted Paulsbo was pretty comparable to us. They grew at a 30% rate. I can't recall whether Paulsbo's had any annexations. If they did, I think they were small.
Yeah.
So they added 2,700 residents, and their population is now 11,975. Bainbridge and Bremerton grew by much lower rates. Bremerton by about 15% and Bainbridge by about a little under 8% growth rates. So they don't break down the county data except for the entire county, including the cities. So I don't know what Silverdale or Kingston did. I think that the county will have to dig into that a little bit more. But what we have been feeling in DCD is reflected in these numbers.
Do you know what the county did as a whole?
Yes, I have that open here. Let me just toggle to my other spreadsheet. The county grew at a 9%, 9.75% growth rate. So their total population is 275,611. And of course, that's a year old now. So we've had a pretty big year of growth since these numbers came out, which will be reflected in the 2022 OFM data next April.
I would say Bainbridge Island has been very successful in their effort to slow growth on Bainbridge Island.
Yeah.
So Nick, when do these numbers become official, our official population numbers?
Well, they are official, but they won't become official with OFM, I think, until April. Well, they will be April 1, 2022 data numbers released June 30th of 2022.
So officially our population hasn't changed because OFM drives that.
Well, officially the census, OFM is based on the census. They just haven't updated to reflect the census data. I think the census is still the best data we have at this point.
So when do we change our signs, or do we leave them alone until we get our next OFM?
You
number?
can buy as many signs as you want.
Stickers, Mark. The signs are there. It's the sticker.
Yes. Yeah, if it's worth it to change the sign, I think we just changed it like this last month. So if you want to change it again, I think we can change it again.
So the current number is 15,000. It's a little over 15,000.
I've got it here. It's 15,260.
Okay, so it went up by a couple of 250-ish. So
yeah, but remember, we're a year ahead. The current sticker is 2021, whereas the census is 2020. So we're realistically by now probably 600 people above what the sign says.
So what's the consensus here? Do we just leave the sign alone? Or do we grab this number? I mean,
I'm not worried as much as what the sign says as I am about how they give us funding based on our population.
okay,
Yeah,
okay, we'll leave the signs alone.
how much is it? You say it's a sticker. I'm sure
Yeah,
there's labor
A lot of
involved.
them.
Put the sticker.
Yeah, it's staff time and man hours are more expensive than the stickers. To every point that you enter the city, you've entered the city of Port Orchard, population 15,587.
I'm not in a big hurry to change the stickers, so,
Okay.
okay. Anything else? I'm trying to be cognizant of that 6 o'clock goal.
You did well.
I got one update, one for good of the order, and it's not very good of the order, but talked to the mayor about, and he asked me to let the finance committee know. The city received notices from the IRS this year in 2020 regarding late payments, which occurred in previous years. In 2019, one biweekly payment, 2020, one biweekly payment, and 2021, one biweekly payment. These notices were significantly delayed due to the IRS shutting down for COVID, and now they are extremely backlogged, obviously not giving us notices for two plus years on an issue. So once the city received the notice in 2021, we immediately made changes in our payroll process to prevent future occurrences. We have now reevaluated our checklist, our timing. We are uploading payroll and IRS payments on the same day. There's actually now instituted a back check where payroll will come back and verify that the payments were uploaded and paid. So I think we have resolved from an internal process the issue from a process standpoint, which made the late payment occur. At the same time, we have paid 2 of those penalties, and we have been in contact with the IRS since I believe it was March, and we've been talking with them about applying for their penalty waivers, and there is a long process to do that. So we have applied for a penalty waiver with the 3rd payment, and we have to wait until we receive written approval from the IRS, even though we have spoken with representatives and they said we are likely to receive the waiver approval. Once we get through that approval, we will request the other 2 accounts also be abated and waived. So we are working through the IRS's process to request those abatements and waivers. And at this point, all we can do is wait until hopefully they contact us this year. So not great news, but we did want to make the Finance Committee aware.
So if we get a waiver on this, there's no guarantee we're going to get a waiver.
There's no guarantee we're going to get a waiver. That's correct.
And once we get this first waiver, then we have to apply one at a time for the next 2, or?
Correct. And it's almost like we're requesting a refund for the penalties we've already paid. And the representative told us to place a hold on this one that we're requesting the waiver from, and to pay the other 2 as a good faith gesture, and then request a refund after the fact and go through that process. So there's multiple layers, multiple processes, and we're just trying to follow whatever guidance they're giving us to address the issue. But even on the phone with them, they keep letting us know that they're several months behind due to COVID shutdown. So be patient and wait. So the reason we paid the 2 waivers, they were able to place a hold on the one, but the other 2 would continue to incur interest because they can only place one hold on one application at a time. And so to avoid further interest and penalty, his advice would be just to pay it and then seek the abatement and refund.
So how much are we talking about to pay those?
So the 2 we've paid, one was for $1,500, the other was for $3,500, and the one we have on hold is for $24,000.
So they're suggesting that we shouldn't pay the 24,000 because it's on hold, but pay the other 2.
Correct. And we've had conflicting guidance from the IRS, so I'm hesitant to pay the $24,000 if the last rep said, hey, this, if you end up paying, it's going to throw you out of the line as far as the sequence of events of when to request the abatement and waivers. So I'm trying to follow their guidance to request the immediate abatement on the largest one, and then follow up with the refunds on the other 2.
So my question is, do we know for a fact on the one that we've applied for the waiver that in fact the penalties and interest have stopped on that?
The last phone call we had with them, they said it was still on hold. So we believe so, based on what they verbally say. And I guess the biggest issue with our experience so far with IRS is that get a different rep, they say a different thing. And what we really need to have is have it in writing. And they're slow to put things in writing. And I actually had to request that we put things in writing first before they would respond. So we did put together that letter and the request, and we sent it certified mail and still have not received confirmation. So we had to follow up again. Again, they said they're in a backlog, and that's pretty much the only response we continue to receive.
Okay, again, without having had a lot of time to think of this, my knee-jerk reaction is just to kind of talk about what you said when you get different answers from when you make contact with different people within the IRS. Have we considered calling an attorney who deals in IRS claims or payroll claims, or a CPA that deals with this on a regular basis, and get information other than whoever is answering the phone at the IRS, getting someone that does this every day, even if we have to pay money for the advice?
I haven't yet, but I can certainly reach out to at least Charlie, see if she has any contacts, and I can also reach out to our CPA, see if she's been through this process before and what's her experience. So that's a good suggestion. That's one way to go about it.
Yeah, the $5,000, the 1,500 and 3,500, those are kind of, we can swallow that or deal with it. But when you're talking 24,000, that's a different issue. And we want to make sure we're doing it correctly so that we don't incur additional liabilities.
That's
Yeah,
the big thing in my mind, is that I don't want the penalties and interest to continue to accrue while we're figuring out who's right at the IRS.
Yeah, I agree. So I'll follow up with you guys at our next meeting and report back. We'll reach out to him again, and I'll see what Charlie says or any other CPAs about kind of moving this forward, hopefully faster.
Yeah.
And I will report, I actually did go and meet with them in person because I thought that might help in one of our many communications with the IRS. We've had maybe 5 or 6 different phone calls. Again, when you call in, you're on hold for at least an hour and a half, trying to get to a rep. You get to a rep, finally you have to go through this verification. I thought, okay, cool, I'll go make a meeting. We'll actually go sit in and have the meeting. So I did that. And again, I still don't feel like we're getting this resolved the way we would hope, and they continue to say, hey, COVID is the reason we're so backlogged, we can't even get to your application. So
I will relate just something, and this happened several years ago, but one of our local nonprofits that represents businesses down on Bay Street had lost their nonprofit status because they had not filed appropriate forms and stuff. And so I went ahead and tried to reestablish, and we did reestablish their nonprofit status through the IRS. And it took almost 3 years to complete that process. It was not done timely.
Well,
But it got done, but you just had to be patient. So
a recent personal experience with the IRS and trying to talk to someone, I sat on hold for about an hour and a half. Unfortunately, when I called an hour and a half before their quitting time. So during that hour and a half of hearing all of this, please hold, your call is important, the last recording I got was, our offices are closed, thank you, click, and hung up on me. So I appreciate being your crew, but I think Beck's suggestion is a great one. I think we need to find what we can do to, I guess, back us up a little bit stronger.
Yeah, I think we have a CPA on contract, don't we, Noah?
yes, we do. Yeah, so I'll reach out to the firm and talk with them about it.
Okay.
Great.
I got one last thing, go to the order that's positive. They're both related to the community center. So as of today, about the time this meeting started, Charlie sent me the lease document related to, that's the attachment to the purchase and sale that the bank has finally approved. So we can open escrow and get that doggone thing going. And I also got the amendment for the public facilities district, and my whining and complaining worked, and they didn't put the poison pill that they were talking about. It went out. Now, mind you, this is a document that's going before their board here. I think it's next week, and Nick, you may need to cover that one for me. But anyway, I have the draft ILA that their board will approve, and then I'll bring it to the full council in September, first meeting in September, I hope.
Right.
So the conditions on the PFD put on it were reasonable, that we needed to have execute purchase and sale with the bank. We can't close on it until we do. That we need the DNR lease assignment approved. That's reasonable. And that we needed the release of the commerce money. And the only thing that's holding up the commerce money is the assignment of the DNR lease. So they're all interrelated, the things that are holding us up. Once and we've got indication that DNR will complete that assignment. You should see that possibly in one of our September meetings too.
excellent.
Good. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order?
Nothing for me.
No,
Adjourn this meeting, and we'll see everybody at the council meeting.
all right, thank you.
I know.
Thank you.